This conference will now be recorded.
You heard it from her. So yeah, we are recording, and I guess that would be a good time to make this announcement that Calms actually has a YouTube channel right now, and we've posted most of our previous webinar videos, and we're planning on posting all of our future webinar videos. And I'm just dropping a link in the chat right now, so you can just click on that. And please subscribe. I think we need like something around 20 more subscribers to get a custom URL, and that would make it a lot easier for people to find us in the future. So if you could click that link and subscribe, that'd be great. Secondly, I wanted to kind of give a pitch for our next webinar that we're having on May 5th. It's going to be on COVID surveillance and wastewater and how you can use that kind of data to manage COVID. And so yeah, it's going to be a great talk. We have some researchers from Tulane University, and so I definitely would encourage you to join that. I'm going to share a different screen now, and this is actually our first webinar that we have a sponsorship, and we're really happy to be working with YSI. They were able to give us some support for this this webinar that we're having right now, and so all of the speakers that we have and all of the comms officers all work as volunteers. And so all of this money is going to go directly into student scholarships. So I wanted to acknowledge YSI for supporting students who are working in water and limnology. And I'm going to play a quick video. And the video is on one of YSI's new instruments. It's called the NitroLED probe, and it's basically like a mini spectrophotometer that you can plug it into an EXO or one of the other YSI probes, and it can give you some really, really low level nitrate readings. And that could be really useful in wastewater applications and really useful for surface water quality managers like a lot of us are. So I'm going to be playing that right now. And actually, I'm going to reshare it because I want to make sure that you're going to be able to hear it. Okay, here we go. Awesome. So thanks again to YSI for your continued support. And now I'll turn it over to Stephen to introduce our speaker today.
Great. Thanks, Mark, and thanks everybody for being here. I see we've got 31 folks on the line today. So I'll introduce Nina Levins with Putah Creek Council. You should point out that I'm wearing a Putah Creek Council t-shirt. I'm on the board of directors. I've known Nina since she started at Putah Creek Council in 2018. She's the education program manager at Putah Creek Council now. She's risen through the ranks in the almost 3 years she's been there. Graduated from Humboldt State University in 2016, so just before starting the BS in environmental biology. And sadly for us, she's moving on to Canada to get a master's in environmental engineering pretty soon. So we'll be missing her, but she'll be sharing about the work that she's been doing for the last 3 years. And I should also mention one of the sites that she'll be talking about is outside of the town of Winters at Lake Solano, and the CALMS conference in 2016. So before Nina's tenure, we did a field trip there to the lake. So so many CALMS folks have been there, and Putah Creek Council was part of the welcoming group for that. So thanks, Nina, for joining us today and giving this webinar. And let me turn it over to you if I can find your, where did it go, name? Give me a second here. Well, here, I can do this. Hold on. Make presenter. There you go.
Awesome. Okay, I think there I am.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Sorry, let me add a couple things. So, folks, if you want to comment, you can put things in the chat window, and then we'll raise those questions when Nina's done. And everybody's on mute and invisible, so that's perfect. And at the end, you could unmute yourself if you need to ask a question or something like that. So, thanks, Nina.
Sure, wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. Yeah, like Stephen said, I'm the education program manager here at Putah Creek Council. I'm super excited to be giving this talk, so thank you so much for inviting me. Looked through the roster of the past webinars, and this one probably isn't going to be as technical. This might be like the citizen science version of the webinars that you guys are used to, but I'm super excited to share this information with you. And hopefully I do a good job of showcasing how really vital and important the citizens are in our organization, because we are a very small organization. So I'll go ahead and start with kind of the who, what, when, where. Who is Putah Creek Council? We are a community-based environmental nonprofit organization that was formed in 1988. Our volunteers and citizen science are really important parts of our organization. Like I said, we're a very small staff, and we rely heavily on staff and volunteer efforts. Our mission is to protect and enhance Putah Creek and its tributaries and the watershed, in this watershed, through advocacy, education, and community-based stewardship. So we have three main departments, like I said, which are the education departments, or the education department, stewardship, and advocacy. And we also have another section, which is kind of, it's been a longer running thing, but less, you know, maybe less formal, but more formal now. So the nursery also. So we have a variety of education programs for all different ages. Our stewardship department engages community volunteers, and our nursery propagates and distributes native plant materials for a variety of watershed restoration projects in the area. So I'll start by, it seems like most of you are pretty familiar, but for those of you who aren't familiar with the Putah Creek watershed, it's part of the larger Putah Cache watershed, just south of Clear Lake, kind of encompasses all the mountains in the coastal range that drain into Lake Berryessa. Putah Creek itself starts in the Cobb Mountains, kind of from a spring, and it runs all the way through the Monticello Dam, which forms Lake Berryessa, through the kind of inner dam reach between the Monticello Dam and the Solano Diversion Dam, forms Lake Solano Park, like we were talking about, which will be showcased in this presentation. It goes through Winters, and as you can see, that little blue arrow is kind of where our headquarters is. So we're based out of Winters, California. And then it runs Putah Creek, the lower Putah Creek, which is the 23 miles east of the Solano Diversion Dam, which the Solano Diversion Dam diverts water to the cities so that they can use it in Solano County. But Putah Creek runs eventually through Davis and then out through kind of the Yola Wildlife Area. The causeway, most folks are kind of familiar with that. I kind of thought about, you know, citizen science elements as kind of the hard science and the soft science side of it. So I'll kind of feature both of those. The hard science side is the data collection, contributing to resource, you know, helping reach common goals, fundraise, identify and answer questions, and discover new things. But there's also lots of knowledge sharing and helping to increase scientific literacy. And then for the softer side of things, I view citizen science as kind of helping people to foster genuine connections with nature and environmental issues around them, increasing interest in local science and conservation topics, and helping to provide accessible information that helps empower community members. And it's just such a wonderful way to get non-scientists involved in field work. And these volunteers and citizen scientists are so immensely helpful in this field of work, especially in the nonprofit, because there's just frankly not enough staff time to do all of this stuff and also do our job. So it's really helpful to have citizen science and community scientists around us. So I like to say, you know, I was thinking about when community science had been super vital in this organization, and one of the first things that I thought of really was the conception of Putah Creek Council. This organization was formed kind of out of one big citizen science project. It began as kind of a conservation committee that was formed by the Yellow Audubon Society in 1988. And I'm not sure the exact story or exactly what happened, but community members and kids from Camp Putah had discovered that Putah Creek had run dry through Davis, which meant that the owners of the dam weren't releasing enough flow so that there was surface water year round. And so what happened was these community members took action, they did their research, and realized that they needed to have flow for anadromous fish and for healthy wildlife populations. So there ended up being a lawsuit against the owners of the dam to release constant flow. That lawsuit lasted about 10 years. And I know this slide is kind of boring, but definitely important to understand that the reason why the lawsuit was in the end won was from this one tiny fish and game code, which is 5937, talking about having to release enough surface flow to pass through so that you know, fish are living there that can be healthy, and there can be, you know, ample water for wildlife and recreation. So out of that lawsuit, lasted 10 years, and in 2000 it was finally settled that there was an accord signed which outlined you know, the release of permanent surface flow waters. It formed a committee which is called the Lower Putah Creek Coordinating Committee. So below the diversion dam is called the Lower Putah Creek. It's about 23 miles. So there's a Lower Putah Creek Coordinating Committee that kind of talks about projects and different restoration techniques and things that will be used on the creek. There was a streamkeeper that was hired, allowed for funding for projects and long-term monitoring and that kind of thing. So this was an example of when community involvement was absolutely vital in the organization and kind of for the conception of the organization. So with the accord being signed and with the Lower Putah Creek Coordinating Committee, it was really the time to work together and accomplish, you know, common goals, allowed for really great, you know, people could work together, and all these, as you can see, all these different agencies work together to accomplish common goals. A lot of times when there's a project going on, it's a bunch of different partnerships as well as community members. So with all these organizations and with our organization, this is the perfect chance to introduce volunteers and citizen science into these programs. So I figured I would just do a quick overview of the kind of different departments that we have, and how that we mobilize citizens and get folks involved in each aspect of our programming. So just a quick overview of our three main departments and programs. The first being education. So our education department has anywhere from 6 to 10 programs running at a time, ranging from, you know, kindergarten to high school. Then we also have our after school middle school club that we do, a high school and college restoration internship, which actually just began today. The first day of our One Creek internship was today. We also have a community lecture series quite similar to this one. It's called Creek Speak. It's a community education program. And we also have a few docent teams at Putah Creek Council. So our stewardship program is really kind of the hands-on stuff. So this focuses on restoration and habitat enhancement within the watershed, and with our partners. This is the perfect opportunity for citizen science and community members to get involved in hands-on restoration. The stewardship program also is the one that organizes our biannual creek cleanup days. We help to educate folks about native plants and the benefits to wildlife and natural areas. And we also have a team that is our trained stewardship team. So they help lead other groups of volunteers and stuff like that. The other big section now is our nursery, our native watershed plant nursery. So on the left-hand side, you can see at our old facility was the CAL FIRE facility right off of Highway 80, kind of by Childs, Mason Childs. But we just moved over to a new nursery space off of Highway 128 here, kind of in between Winters and Vacaville. The nursery collects seeds. We collect seeds and propagate native plants for watershed restoration projects. There's lots and lots of opportunities for volunteers and citizen scientists to get involved related to horticulture and native plants. Really, there's so many different opportunities for folks to get involved in this space because there's something for everyone. It's really accessible. It's easy. It's easier work than field work. You know, you can kind of just stand and do something, or you can sit at a desk and, you know, do something where you don't necessarily have to be, it's not as strenuous, you know? So I guess this is kind of the overview of what the organization does and how we mobilize citizens. And I was going to go through just a few of our individual programs and how we incorporate citizen science elements into this. If anyone has any questions at this point, this might be a good place to take a little break, or I can just dive right into the programs. Okay. So our first education program that I wanted to talk about, which I guess some of you might be familiar with, is our Waterways Program at Lake Solano Park. This focuses on watershed education. Students really get to see, it's a place-based learning program, so students get to visit their water source, which is Lake Solano Park, and see who they share it with, what kind of nature is there, what plants and animals are there, and some possible threats and effects in their watershed. The citizen or community science elements in this one are really fun because the students get really excited about testing for water quality and stuff. So we talk about point source pollution, how to reduce and prevent pollution, how it might accidentally make its way into the watershed. And we also talk about you know, different ways that our watershed can be affected in ways that we don't even see sometimes. So students get to get out there and learn about effects of erosion and how to prevent it. They get to do some biomonitoring, which is always fun. We look at, or the students get to look at invertebrates and where they lay on the pollution scale and kind of what that means for water quality. So for the past 2.5 years that I've been working here, I've with the students been able to collect lots of water quality data, and we then share that with the park. They also get to do water quality testing, so other water quality testing. So as you can see in the photo, they're testing for turbidity. They test dissolved oxygen content and stuff like that. This is also one point where I really like to emphasize careers in science to students. So I get to show them that, you know, this is somebody's job to be out in the field testing water quality, and expose them to different careers in science and different ways that they can get involved in either citizen science or as a career, which is really awesome. Putah Creek Club is our middle school after school club. So these students kind of get to guide their own learning process, and it's based on their inquiries and what they're interested in. Some of the types of things that we end up doing with those kids are some monitoring. So for a couple of the projects here in the Winters Nature Park, they're able to do photo monitoring, which we turn over to the city. So in the places where they necessarily weren't planted before, the kids get to plant, take a picture before, take a picture after, survey for nesting birds, pollinators, wildlife, birds. In the left-hand picture here, you can see we did some trackpad and coverboard surveys. So the coverboard, we just, the students put down a board and a cup to catch what invertebrates or whatever were there. They got to survey them and key them out and then release them. So they were learning how to monitor and how to record data, which was really fun. And it's also super helpful for our own monitoring for the newly restored sites. Oh, they also got to do, so on the right-hand picture, you can see they were analyzing tracks on a pad. So we set up a little track pad with sand, really fine sand, with some bait in the middle, and we put a wildlife camera there. So the students were able to analyze wildlife camera photo and see kind of the difference between a newly restored area versus a area that had been restored long ago. they get to do lots of sampling, kind of the same stuff, macroinvertebrate sampling and keying, water quality sampling. Every fall now, or mostly every fall, there'll be salmon coming through there, so they get to survey and record if they see salmon coming through the creek, and it's really awesome to see. And also in this one, we do emphasize person science and let them follow their inquiries so that they feel genuinely connected with the science that they're doing. So our One Creek Restoration Internship is what was starting today. This is our high school and college students who do hands-on restoration and conservation throughout the watershed. We call it the One Creek One Turn Internship because they're usually work with all the other interns. Because of COVID, it's not so much. But they are really, really vital in helping us achieve common goals. So as a small organization with these larger partnerships and goals that we need to achieve, a lot of times they help us. While they're learning a skill, they also help us in achieving these really large goals. So they're super helpful in helping remove, a rundo or some native vegetation. They help us a lot with seed collection and propagation, and in turn, they're learning how to identify seeds and when they're viable and ready to collect and how to collect them responsibly. On the picture on the bottom, we were working with the UC Davis Riparian Reserve on their section of the creek that they manage, and they were helping JP complete a nesting or burrowing owl survey. So they monitored and recorded the data and then sent it off to him. So he, this plot of land would have taken him hours and hours to survey, and they were able to help him complete that fairly quickly. Lots of bird and wildlife surveying. Up in the top picture, the students were learning how to use the Jepson manual to key plants. So they're able to help us collect data about what plants we're seeing, what plants are, when we remove the invasives, they're able to help us collect data about what plants they're seeing under, native plants that are going to push up later. So that's super duper helpful. Another education program that we have that is really helpful in mobilizing citizens with citizen science is our docent program and our education teams. So we have two different docent teams who, one work at Lake Solano Park and one out at the UC Davis or the City of Davis Open Space Preserves. And they're trained volunteers that help not only interpret natural resources and help with park use, but they also do help us monitor and collect data. So some of the things that they do for us that are extremely helpful for the cities and for the parks is bird counts and nesting bird surveys. So every year when there's the backyard bird count, our docent teams are able to get out there and help monitor birds. Most of them are really interested in birds and collecting data. This one is really, really good and really interesting because, sometimes people see science as a big, scary thing, but this is something that makes it extremely accessible. And, we get docents from all over the place skill-wise, where some are retired professors, but some are just folks who are really interested in getting involved and getting out in nature. And so this is one of the ones where I feel as a softer science, where they're just making genuine connections, but they are also collecting data and analyzing things and helping us achieve these common goals. So it is really wonderful. They also help facilitate talks and tours. Now, something that I see making citizen science more accessible and also more maybe user-friendly is these mobile applications like iNaturalist and mapping sorts of things, like geotagging stuff. So I see in the future, and also it's happening now, is our citizen science teams and our volunteers are able to connect with the public and with the parks virtually. So applications like iNaturalist, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but something that's really helpful is, if you're walking through a park and you see something, either a species of special concern or a rare plant or something, you can input that data and it not only shares it with us, but also the general public. So that is something that is really wonderful and sometimes vital for parks. So yeah, like I said, our docent teams are really wonderful, and one of the docent teams that we have is specifically out at Lake Sonoma Park. So I figured that since some of you folks know a little bit about the park, that I would give a quick highlight. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar, Lake Sonoma Park is right in between the Monticello and the Solano Diversion Dam. It's kind of right off of Highway 128, just east of Winter, or west of Winter, sorry, where that little blue arrow is. And it has really become kind of a hub for community science because there's many different amenities, but also different habitats and different activities and lots and lots of different things that can be done there. So our docent teams help out with interpretive elements and, like I was saying, that app for public use, but also something that I'm seeing happening now. It is unfortunate that a lot of Lake Sonoma Park with this latest fire, the LNU fire, was pretty heavily scorched on the campsite and the upland hiking side. So something that's becoming extremely important for us and for the other agencies is post-fire monitoring and restoration. So some of our groups have already been mobilized in that department, where as soon as it was safe to enter and there were no environmental hazards, a lot of our folks were able to get in and do some post-fire planting, some restoration work, and also data collection about what was burned, what's still there, that kind of thing. In the bottom, you can see just west of Lake Solano Park, so at our new nursery facility, it did get pretty heavily scorched. There's a group of Girl Scouts who have been working on some citizen science projects, so they were working towards their bronze award, and the thing that they wanted to do was help to restore a burned area. And so they were able to help remove brush and do some replantings. They were able to create an educational pamphlet so that they could share it with other Girl Scout groups and other folks who are interested in learning about that stuff. So they included some information like something about native plants and something about fire ecology and kind of post-fire restoration, which was really awesome that we were able to assist them and help them with doing that. And also they were able to receive their bronze award, so that was fun. Yeah, so Lake Solano Park is also, I would see in the future, lots more water quality testing, lots more post-fire monitoring and restoration type stuff. Something else that is really good that happens out there is the bird monitoring and bird data collection. A lot of the docents are really interested in birds and will create resources for others. So something that they do is put together like a bird guidebook. So for anyone who's coming out to the park or for anyone who's interested, they'll be able to have kind of a baseline of what's out there. And it's also really helpful for us to know have some data about the birds and wildlife that are visiting the park. And then the one last education program that I wanted to talk about, because our volunteers and citizen scientists do so much for us and our organization, they honestly are the backbone of our organization. There was one way that I kind of felt that, it was flipped. So citizen science, it was the experts kind of putting together presentations and putting it forward in a way that's really accessible. So our Creek Speak speaker series is a 6-month series that we do here where we have, past educators or professors or, PhD folks picking out a local topic and putting it out in a way, so it could be a really complex topic, but they're putting it out in a way that's really accessible to educate the public. And it's really exciting because it kind of provides insight about past, present, and future research, and it allows people an outlet or a way to get involved in local topics. So that is one way that, the science they really help us with science, and then the science also helps them. So I always thought it was really cool. And it allows people a really easy, accessible way to interact with science in a way that's free. You can watch it. It's kind of like this, where you could rewatch it as many times as you would like to. And it really reaches a wide audience and ramps up participation and curiosity. So it's also a good way for our partners or other organizations to get information out about a new project and invite, opportunities for volunteers and citizen scientists. So enough with the education programs. I'll talk now about kind of the hands-on ways that we mobilize citizens and that folks are able to get interact with their community science in a really hands-on way. Is through our stewardship department. The stewardship team is a team of trained volunteers, kind of like our docents, but for the stewardship side of things, who help with habitat restoration and the habitat enhancement side of things. One of the single largest, I would say, citizen science days at our organization is the coastal cleanups or the creek cleanups, which is in partnership with the California Coastal Commission. I would say it's our largest volunteer day. We get sometimes upwards of 100 volunteers. The photo on the top is from Peter Moyle, and it was the creek before, the cleanup started happening. So back in the day, they would find things like cars, machinery, equipment in the creek. And now on the right-hand side, you can see the data from the trash that's been collected in the last 20 to 30 years is more like cigarette butts and caps and lids and stuff like that. But we give each volunteer or volunteer group a sheet of paper that you're able to record what the data about what trash you're collecting, kind of an estimate of how many pounds you're collecting, and where the location that you collected it from. So this, I would say, is our largest like citizen science data collection day and also volunteer day. And it's organized by the stewardship department and stewardship team. And then that data that then gets sent off to the Coastal Commission and kind of becomes part of this really large data set. And we've got, I'm not sure exactly within Putah Creek Council how long it's been running, but it's been running a really long time, and we've got a really solid set of data from that. So that is really amazing and wonderful. And then the last kind of really hands-on way, like I was saying, the stewardship and the nursery are really intertwined. But our native watershed plant nursery is a really great way to mobilize citizens and get folks involved in the restoration and conservation, but in kind of a, you can pick if you want to be really hands-on, if you want to sit behind a desk and collect seed data. So one of the really cool things that happens in our nursery is that we either collect our seeds ethically from the watershed or buy the seeds from hedgerow farms, but either way, they're collected from this watershed. They're planted and propagated and processed by our volunteers and citizen scientists. And by the time they go into their restoration sites, they've been, touched by multiple human hands in different stages of their life cycle. And that would be something that wouldn't be possible without our volunteers and our citizen scientists. And so, they're able to get involved at the seed collection, the seed processing, propagation, plant care. We do utilize our citizen scientists to help us keep track of our seed inventory. There's opportunities for students to get involved with like video production type things about the nursery, many volunteer opportunities, and also one major time where our citizen scientists and volunteers were really resourceful and helped us so very much was they were able to help out with creating our native plant identification cards. So we have a little resource kind of book that we can either look, use ourselves or pass to other volunteers. That it has a really good, it's a really good resource for looking about, native plants around the area. So that was something that was really vital. And one other thing I kind of wanted to highlight and spotlight about restoration in this area is something that happened within my time here in 2018 or 2017 was the channel realignment here in Winters Nature Park. This is kind of a really good highlight of how many different opportunities there are and how folks are able to get involved at each stage. And this was something that, the channel was realigned here in the nature park, and there was opportunities for folks to get involved. Planting, monitoring, prepping plants at the nursery. As you can see in the photos, students from our field trips were able to come plant grass plugs, and this one is a really good opportunity for people to get involved in long-term monitoring. So if we had volunteers or citizen scientists that were interested in nesting bird surveys or bird and wildlife monitoring, herbivory, unfortunately, was something that was happening also. So we could have our team, a team of volunteers could come in and survey how many of the trees or the plants had been chomped on by beavers or something like that. And that is all information that's really useful for us and for the other agencies that were involved in this project. And this one was really interesting too, because it's something that's long running and it's something that's still going on. So there's still a ton of opportunities to do vegetation management, bird surveying, all that type of stuff, because it's going to be such a long running project. So it's something that people are able to get involved at the bottom, at the first steps of it, and also, through the coming years. And this was another example of something where the community members and our volunteers were essential to completing a project and reaching common goals. So yeah, I'll go ahead and wrap up kind of, the citizen science and community science in our programming, and just say, that we do our best to try and engage people in a really accessible way that is interesting and engaging in all different departments. And as for future engagement, moving forward, especially in California, there's probably going to be a lot of opportunities to get involved with fire ecology and post-fire monitoring and management, climate change, drought and water resources, environmental justice, and would hope that the organization and others are able to do it in an accessible, fun way that, keeps people interested and really sparks their interest and in a way that's fun. So I also figured I would put in just, if there were community members who are wondering how to get involved, or, what's a good way to get interested in community science or citizen science. I would say that I started out also, by volunteering. There's so many different ways to get involved volunteering and asking questions, joining a docent team, signing up for newsletters and mailing lists, check out your local efforts, or just email an organization. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up and just say, that I was super excited to do this presentation, and thank you for having me. And are there any questions?
That was great. Thanks, Nina. There were a few questions. Mark,
Okay.
you wanna go through? We could tag team or something.
Yeah, sure. So the first one I saw was from Janine, and it was about Thule. Let me find it. Do you include Thule in your nursery or replanting programs?
We haven't, as far as I know. We have not. I think we do smaller sedges and rushes, but I'm not aware of any of it. I'm not as familiar with the nursery side of things. I'll have to ask our nursery manager. I can get back to you if you want.
I can add on that one and ask the next question that we have not. There are a good way of getting Thule is to harvest them from somewhere else, because those have already been grown and been successful. So just take the natural nursery. Another question was about the water quality testing and data collection reporting program. Is that written down anywhere in more detail that's publicly accessible? Is that a standardized sort of thing?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm sure that Lake Solano Park itself does have that. We have our own kind of internal, little monitoring system, but I don't think we've ever published it or made it publicly available, not from the 4th and 5th grade program. Would be something that would be really good, especially after all these fires.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that, actually? So, anybody here, I'm sure a lot of people have collected water quality data here. And we all know that if, those data are going to be used for something like to support a 303D listing or something similar, then some pretty rigorous documentation is required. So you have to put together a QAP and all that. And I was wondering, for these big citizen science events, these big, kind of community monitoring efforts. Do you put together that kind of documentation to defend the data, or is it something that you don't usually do?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't think we've gone through any of the rigorous, any of that stuff. Yeah.
Thanks.
Another question specific to the Putah Creek Club. How often does a club like that meet?
Yeah, so it was really hard, of course, over COVID. We haven't seen any of our student groups since last March, except for the Girl Scout group. We would generally meet every other Friday. So every other Friday after they got out of school, we would take them and spend 3 hours down by the creek doing the creek monitoring and whatever they were interested in. Yeah, it was kind of inquiry based, so they kind of decided how they wanted to do what they wanted to do. But yeah, it was every other Friday, and then we would have a lunch meeting with them to kind of plan and coordinate what they wanted to do for the next month.
Right.
I saw Hal asked, do you see many sensitive macroinvertebrates in Putah Creek? And if so, are they becoming more plentiful with time?
You know, I've only, like I said, I've only been here for 2 years or 2.5 years. I do see the ones that are sensitive to pollution, especially in Lake Solano Park, which seems like a good sign to me. But I'm not super familiar with the really sensitive ones, but we definitely do see the ones that are fairly sensitive to pollution. Yeah.
And how often is the middle school after school program held, and is it staff or volunteer led? And same with the broader programs, high school and college age. How much effort is it, I guess, is a general thing, and who leads it?
Yeah, so generally the education, our larger education programs are led by staff. But we always have, like I said, our education team or our docents that also help out. The internship is mostly all staff, and then our partners who help out and kind of co-teach it, they're technically volunteering their time, I think. But for the school age programs, it's mostly, the larger programs are mostly led by staff or part-time seasonal staff. And then the other programs are led by volunteers. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Hal asked, or sorry, did I hear a follow-up?
Oh, I was just gonna say, we do, we train all of our volunteers and they go through, you know, certain things, but it is a really good opportunity to get volunteers involved, so we do wherever we can.
Awesome. So Hal asked, does the stewardship group get the permits for projects like channel realignment?
No, that does all. So we are usually just a partner in that project. So it's usually either a water agency or, you know, a larger entity that's kind of the head project. So that takes years and years to get the permits. We definitely don't have, as a small nonprofit, we don't have the bandwidth to do that. Yeah.
Yep. Great. That was all the questions that were in the chat.
I'm seeing a few more. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So James asked if we can get copies of the native plant ID cards.
I think they're available. Let me write that down. I think they're available on our website and our resources, but I can double check on that.
Is there an email that would be good to reach you at, or?
Sure. Yeah, my email address is just my name, nina@putahcreekcouncil.org. Like Stephen said, I am leaving soon. My last day is later in April. But you can always go to our staff contact page, and there's a bunch of other folks here that would be able to answer that. But let me double check on that, because I think they are available. If not, I can easily share them with you all.
Awesome. James also asked, what caused the channel to be realigned?
So I can't speak too in depth about that, because I'm, you know, it's not my area of expertise, but I think that since the channel had been in size and, you know, gravel mined, and the floodplain was so altered from where it was before, I think that most of the reason why it needed to be realigned was because, you know, for, you know, erosion control, there's a main road right there that the water velocity was going to, you know, it's not my area of expertise, I'm not sure, but there was a bunch of different reasons why. And I think also, you know, there's a sewer treatment plant here, and there was lots of runoff from that, and it just wasn't functioning as a natural, you know, creek should.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
realigned back towards a more natural condition because it had been excavated and used as a sewage treatment pond. The creek itself had.
Yeah.
Okay, next, Janine Pfeiffer had several detailed questions. I think it'd be better, Janine, to ask her directly. So you've got Nina's email on that about the monitoring that was done and all. Sarah Ryan had a question about whether you use iNaturalist or other iPhone apps to track, volunteer data and such.
Yeah, so we use stuff like iNaturalist. We use the Clean Swell app. I don't know if you've heard of that. That one is the one that we use for our cleanup, which tracks trash that's been removed from certain places. We use iNaturalist with our docents and with our education team. And then also we're starting using this new one called, excuse me, I'll just look really quick. It's called Outer Spatial. So it's kind of in Solano County, at least. Of it. It's kind of like All Trails, but it's called Outer Spatial, and it's kind of a dual, it acts as kind of like a social media platform, but also trails and events that are going on near you that are kind of, like outdoorsy. There's a group event led by a docent somewhere here. It's really interesting. And so that's one of the ways that we're utilizing our docent teams is to collect, interesting and dynamic information about the parks that would help, increase foot traffic and stuff like that. Great. And also it's a really good platform to advertise events. So if we had a docent-led event, it would show up on there when someone was searching for, fun things to do in Solano County.
Chandler asked, what kind of instruments do you use for the water quality monitoring?
Yeah, so those ones, we do have, most of the stuff that we do is with our kids, and so we use stuff that is accessible to children. One of the things that we use is like a Secchi tube. So to measure turbidity, the kids will get to pour the water in and read, take readings and interpret data and convert units and stuff like that. So we kind of do it the old-fashioned way, just so that they get their, the hands-on experience that's really essential. They also do dissolved oxygen testing. So they have the DO tabs where they put it in a vial and shake it and compare, what, it's almost like a pH test kind of, where you compare the color to how many parts per million of dissolved oxygen there is. We do have like the fancy stuff where you just put a drop of water on, but that's not as fun for the kids to do.
Great. So, okay, that's all the questions. There were a couple other folks that wanted to follow up on specific things. So, Nina, if you don't mind, put your email in there, and then she was saying she'll be leaving sometime in April, and you're welcome to follow up with me as well. I put my email in there, Sam at
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out and ask me questions or request information. Yeah, like I said, I'm sorry. I know that you guys, I looked through the roster of all the other things that you guys had presented, and it was extremely formal. So I'm assuming that mine was a little less formal than that. So
no, but it's all variety. We got another one on wastewater coming up, so it's different for lake managers too.
Nice.
So it's all good.
Yeah, feel free to reach out if you all have any questions or have any information requests. I'm always here. So
yeah, great.
Thank you so much for having me too. This was really wonderful. It's awesome to talk about this stuff. I don't get to do this very often.
Yeah, you're great. We really appreciate it, Nina. And thanks, Mark, for organizing these, and look forward to seeing everybody coming up in early May, less than like a month and a half away.
Yep. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks again to YSI for the support.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, bye everybody.